So this week we're going to cover a couple different topics in there. Week 2 should be open on this side. We're going to just do a quick overview of OOP. I'll let you guys kind of go through that. It's just the training material that was there. File organization, what we're really focused on is these APIs. So this week and next week is just API example after API example, so you guys understand how that works, how to gather data, that kind of stuff. All right. At the bottom here is going to be the old videos. These are old videos from years past. Watch those if you guys are struggling or looking for ideas or something like that. Feel free to watch these. Make sure that you use this year's in terms of the homework or what we're actually covering. But there's lots of good stuff in these old videos. Okay. So refresher on OOP. Again, this is just going to take you back out to the real Python portion of it. I'm not going to cover that in class because we need more time to work on other stuff. But I encourage you to go back through here and remember how to write in classes. You won't be writing from scratch in most of these. What you'll need to learn that or refresh yourself on is when we use third-party modules for all of that. So, okay. Let's see here. So, let's work with Rapid API first. So there's several different APIs out there, and an API is what's referred to as an application programming interface. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. Rapid API is just a hub of a bunch of different APIs that are available out there on the internet. So if you're going to search for an API or try to go find something, searching through Rapid API is a good way to start. You may want to use some of these APIs directly from the manufacturer of whoever it is. You'll find that in some of these cases, it makes sense. So for example, Zillow's here, right? And this is the unofficial API for Zillow. You may want to go use the API from Zillow as opposed through the Rapid API part. When you do most of this stuff in Rapid API, you get to generate your own key, and that's licensed against it. And a lot of them are free. So most of these APIs you're going to pull from are going to be free, but you still need to register in order to get an API key. Some of these are not free, right? They're going to be very expensive depending on what you're trying to access data from. So you want to make sure you never submit your key out there in GitHub or in your projects or give it to somebody else, because it's like giving them your credit card. They're literally going to be able to rack up charges on that side. So you can sign up an account on Rapid API. I'm going to sign in. Let's see if I still have a login here somewhere. Okay. So it's got me signed in. Again, you guys can sign up. And what this does is allow us to go find a bunch of different APIs. And let's look at just some popular ones, for example. Okay. So we can see one here for, say, Instagram. This one's going to gather a bunch of information from a bunch of Instagram posts all at one time. You have some Amazon Real Data, GeoCities database. Let's see, there's a Twitter one, Rocket API. So what's something that interests you guys? It just in general. Doesn't matter to me. Some finance APIs, okay. Yep. I've actually written a couple around that one. So that one's kind of cool. Okay, so some flight data APIs. What do you guys like? Which one? Okay, so like Spotify APIs, and I can walk you through that one. You got anything that you like? Weather type APIs. Okay, great. So what we'll do is we'll end up grabbing all 4 of these. Mackenzie, do you have one since you're on here?
What'd you say? Sorry.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I asked what you asked for again. I'm sorry.
Is there any kind of interest that you have that we could find an API for? You have an interest or a hobby in general?
I do social media, so that would be
okay. So maybe being able to scrape Instagram posts that have certain key tags or words or stuff like that. Okay. All right. Great. We will do examples of all those, so that's not a problem. Let me close this down here. Aha. All right, I'm gonna pause this recording. So let's just grab one of the first ones here, for example, flight data, because it's right in front of me. So there's a couple different ones that we can gather flight data from. ABS Exchange is a big one for most flight data type stuff. That's where you would get live air traffic control, position data. You can build out charts and graphs and all sorts of stuff that you want to get out there. We could also do it as a way to compare flight prices from things like Travelocity, Orbitz, Priceline. There's a bunch of different ones out here. Let's see if this one's free. Looks like it is. So I just grabbed this airport data one. So airport info, it looks like is what it's called. All right. When you get access to APIs, you're typically going to get the calls you can make, and you're going to get documentation on these. Now in Rapid API, it's all looks the same. In other words, they put it in the same spots. When you go out and search for other APIs, for example, I'm going to pull up the one that you had. So Spotify, which is Spotify's API for Python. And you're going to see documentation that looks like this. And this is called a read the docs. And read the docs is just a way to spin off documentation onto a website and give you examples of how to run this code. So for example, in this one, you would pip install Spotify, which is its own module for using Python to interact with your Spotify. And you can use it to build out lists. You can use it to build out all sorts of stuff. It's going to give you usually some example code on how to get started. And then you may have to export some environment variables in order to play with that. We're going to play with several of these because they all do things differently. So like this API call here, you could use just plain a web browser in order to get information back. We want to use Python in order to do most of this. So if we click on shell and we're going to go to Python, and what this does is set up our example snippet code over here for Python. And we can either use the HTTP request module or we can use the requests module, one or the other. All right. Requests is the more common ones, but you do have to pip install that. So we're going to have to pip install request to do that. So to get started here, let's fire up our PyCharm. And actually, yeah, PyCharm's fine. Let's do PyCharm. So we're not going to actually set this up to a GitHub repository for this project, right? We're just going to play with stuff local. The idea is that you get used to setting up these type of code snippets in order to retrieve information. So we'll let PyCharm fire up. Over here on the left, you can see that there's different versions. There's a bunch of different endpoints. Now, endpoints are the things that we call in order to gain information from something. In this case, there's only one endpoint, which is airport. All right. And that's going to give us back a bunch of different data about a given airport. Other APIs, as we're going to go check here in a little bit, we'll have like 10, 20 of these. They could also have hundreds of different endpoints to pull and call information from. Let's see what we get back. So let's do a new project. And yeah. Yes. Yep. Airport info. Okay. So this one, we're just going to call this airport info API example. Doesn't matter what you call it. On this side, make sure on this Python interpreter, you guys have your 312 selected that you guys should have installed at this point. And we'll hit create. And again, this is going to set up a Python environment just for this project so that we don't interact with other stuff that's in there. Okay, and so it gives us this example.py file for our main.py. The first thing we want to do is let this come up, and it's trying to create a Git repository and stuff. We're not too worried about that for what we're doing. We do want to come down here and click on Python packages. And there's two things we want to double check. One, in this lower right-hand corner down here at the bottom, we want to make sure that we are on the interpreter that we just created. So in the parentheses, you should see the name of the project you just created. If you didn't, then the interpreter didn't create correctly, and you'll need to click on that go to add new interpreter, local interpreter, and then click on new and hit OK, and you should be good to go. All right. Sometimes that errors out or has some issues. You'll notice over here, the only things installed in Python is pip, right? And pip is what we use to install third-party modules. You also have PyPy there, which will have some built-in modules that are built into Python. So we're going to go to terminal, and we can install packages one of two ways. We can either do it through Python packages, or we can do it through the terminal. We're just going to do it through the terminal. So we need to pip install requests, and requests is with a capital R. And again, this is a package for us to interact with website data and data coming back from an API. And that's it. That's all we had to do to check it out. So if we go back down here to Python packages, you'll notice in this loop here, we hit refresh. We now have pip install or requests installed along with some certification items, char sets, URL libraries. These are all extra packages that had to be installed in order to run the request package. So a lot of times when you guys do one module install, if you don't do a pip freeze, which we'll talk about again, you'll realize that it's not just one package you have to install. You have to install like 5. And so a pip freeze will take care of all that for us. Okay. So I'm going to do a side-by-side here because that makes it a little easier for everybody to see what's going on. And so over here in the middle, you have an app that's through here. Doesn't matter. We have our API key, and you guys should have your own API key in this side. All right. It generates an API key whether or not you need it for this. In this case, you would need it because it's doing the request through Rapid API. And you should keep that key to yourself kind of thing. So for example, when I do these videos, I'll demo this key and then I'll go in and trash it, right? Because I don't want anybody else to use that key. So over here on this client side, we want to make sure we have all that. And we're going to hit copy to pull that information out. And we're going to take our code over here and just paste it straight in. Now let's go back to that website, because what's handy about Rapid API is you can do a test result right here in the browser to make sure everything's working correctly. So if we go to example responses, if I can click correctly, it's trying. Refresh the page here. Oh, in this case, it won't actually let us run it from there. That's why it's grayed out. If you look at parameters in the settings up here, you can send an IATA code, which is the code of the airport we're trying to retrieve. We can also send an ICAO code, which is a code of the airport we want to retrieve. All right. So let's just look up IATA codes because I can't remember which one is which. And so this is the International Air Transport Association. If I want to look at code lookup, sounds like a good idea. Airlines and airport codes. Find out the first 2-letter code of the airline to identify which airline it is. Search tool will find it out, and then find out the 3-letter code of the airport in order to get that out of there. So let's do something just local here for the sake of it. Wichita, Kansas. And we can see the 3-letter code is ICT for those. And then McConnell Air Force Base would be something like IAB. So let's use the ICT one to full Wichita, Kansas here, for example. We put that in. Now, when you look over here, you'll notice that it popped in this query string for us over here. All right. So let's copy that because we're going to need that over here in our example. And this looks good. Let's look at the headers. This is all set in. Authorizations, we don't need one. And then we can go ahead and run that request and see what kind of results we get out of it. So let's do that here in PyCharm. And we're just going to run this code and then we'll explain what it does. So if we run it, you'll see that we got an error text, no airport code provided. All right. Well, we sent this one. That must not have been the right one that we needed in there. Let's send the other one. And there's another query string for that one. So let's pull that. Some of these APIs are better than others. And let's run this. Still nothing back. All right, we're gonna have to find a better one because this is not a very good API. And you'll find this, by the way. Actually, let's go back here. Where was I? Go back to where I was. View, go to playground, test endpoint. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, no airport provided, yet we did provide both of those. So why in our request text raw, we sent those out there. Let's try those parameters again. Okay, that one it found within the JSON. So let's try this again, but I missed something in here. Oh, I know what I missed. I missed the parameters for the query string. Yep, right there off that one. Okay, so let's copy this in and I can explain this a little more. All right, so in simple Python, we're importing our request module. We have our URL, which is the place that we are going to go out to. And if I just take this URL and dump it into a web browser, you'll see that I get nothing back. It basically just says an invalid API key. That's because I don't have the parameters, or in this case, what's called the header set up. So when you go to that URL, you are doing a GET request from the server, right? You guys will post information to the server in order to get a response back. In that GET, we have to set some headers. And in this case, it's expecting the headers of the API key and the host that we're trying to connect to in order to get that. The API gives it to us. All right. When you set this up with Spotify or some other APIs, they're going to give you this information. So you may have to sign up with an API. For example, the financial side. I can sign up with a finance company and get their API key, and I can use that API key to do requests and pull out information. All right. So this is our headers. Then we have to set up a query string. And in this case, that allows us to tell what airport we want to chase down. In this case, let's just do the IATA portion. And we're going to set in the airport code of ICT. Our response, which is what a variable name that we're setting within our Python project. And then we're going to do a request.get to that URL using these headers. And the parameters we're going to pass is our query string up here. And notice our query string uses a what? Does anybody remember that from 360? What is this here? It is a dictionary. Yep. Yep. So we're passing in a dictionary in which the key is the name that they wanted for a parameter, and then the value is whatever we want to type in. So this case, we're just going to type ICT. And then at this point, we will get a JSON response back. JSON is just a structured form of data. It's very, very similar to what we use for dictionaries. So as a matter of fact, we will store information as if it's a dictionary because we can pull and retrieve it. So we're going to convert whatever that response that comes back to as JSON formatted data, and then simply use the print command to print it to the screen. All right. So whether it's a good response or bad response, we don't know. We're just going to give it a shot at this point and see what happens. Now, notice when we were getting a bad response, if the key was error, it gave us text to say what was going wrong. So we could modify our code to say, hey, if it shows up with a key of error, go ahead and print this out as we have some error, maybe in red text or whatever we decided to do. For now, we're just going to assume print back whatever it gives us. All right. So let's go ahead and print this, or run this code rather. And you'll see we get this really long dictionary that kind of goes off the side of the screen, right? But we got data back. So does anybody remember from 360 how we could print dictionary data nice and easily? Pretty print, right? So let's do import pretty print. And it's very nice to use this when you guys are playing with APIs. So instead of printing this data, let's do a pp print, pprint, run this. And now we have a nice dictionary that we can kind of see what we're pulling out from. So given this airport code of ICT, we can get back all the information that we would want on this. So we could figure out the country, the county that's going through there, the phone number, the longitude and latitude. And then we could take that information and plug that into something like Google Maps and have it actually printed out on the screen. Where is this airport? And that kind of code going through there. We get the full address. We can even get the current UCT code in order for that to come through. All right. So simple question. We have a code that we want. Give us back all the information about it. It's a very, very simple API. Now you could set different things inside of here and then build a Python project around this, right? So say I have a list of airports, right? And I have ICT, I have MCI. See if I can remember all the ones off the top of my head. PHX. That's not right. Yeah, it is. Got any other airports? Jax, there you go. Anybody else? LAX, okay. Good start. So we have a list of these that we want to pull out. We have to do a request for every single one of these in order to store that information back. So we would have to write a simple little code, something like for airport in airports, right? And then we got to go grab some information inside of there. So let's take our code that we have up here. And we just care about this response. Let's stick that inside of our for loop. And then what we're replacing is this ICT, right? So this is going to be something like for airport, and this will become airport. And we're going to look up this as an IATA code. And now that we have that in there, we get this response string back, right? And we know that that's going to give us a response.json as information. And this is basically an airport dictionary at this point, right? So airport equals, and then we can say it's setting up as JSON data. Okay. Now that we have this airport dictionary, we should probably call that something like that. We might want to add that to some overarching database. So we'll just call it database. It's not a real database. It's just a dictionary for us. And we have an empty dictionary. All right. So now that we have all this, we need to set the dictionary. So it would be something like exactly what this, it's scary how quickly this can memorize what I'm wanting to do here. We have database airport, which means in the database, we're going to take the airport that we just specified, and we're going to set that to the string that we have inside there. Okay. And then we could pretty print that out. We're not wanting to do that. For now, we're just wanting to store everything in the database. Once we have everything in the database, now what we may want to do is just print out what key information should we pull out of here. Location, so like the name, the street address, city, state, and code. Something very, very simple in there. So print airport name, and of course we can use our F statements for all this. So let's do this and say for what do we want here? We want airport, comma, airport dict in database items. I love how it's just auto-completing everything for me, right? So remember, items is going to give us back a key value pair. We know that the key is the name of the airport, or in this case, the code of the airport. The value is the dictionary that's associated with that airport. So we would want to pull in order to set this, which item would be the airport name. If we look at this code that's over here. Be our airport dictionary, right? And then what key are we wanting to pull out? Name, right? Name pulls out the Wichita Dwight Eisenhower National Airport. Sure. So we got that. Then we might want to print out what? We said the address, right? So this would be street number. So address. And we would do something like street number. So that only street number. And then we want to tack on to the end of that, right? And this would be our street address. So what do you know? It already knows exactly what we want to type in there. So for this to work right for what we're trying to do, we would also need that one. We need the airport dictionary. And this is our street, right? Okay. And then we kind of have the rest of it all the way through there. Street code, city, state, country. That all looks good. Let's see what our errors are here. One too many. There we go. Something like that. And of course, we can make this look a whole lot better, but this is just to give us an initial phase out. So we may want to do, instead of an S statement like this, we could use 3 triple quotes, if you remember, and that allows us to structure this a little bit. So let's do kind of a tab spacing. Okay. Something like that. And let's see what our results are. Now, remember, this is doing an API call for every single time that we want to pull something out of this database. So let's go ahead and run this code again. And let's see, we got a literal. Oh, yeah, probably can't do triple quotes. Yep, you're right. There we go. There you go. And so if we go back and look, we see our airport name came out, the address. Now, of course, my tabbing and spacing is not the greatest. We would obviously want to fix that. But you can see we can make an API call and then start pulling massive amounts of information into our project. Right. Now, you could take this one step further, make a little console thing that says, give me the name of your 5 favorite airports. You put those in, then we go in and test and pull that information out of here. Now, once we pulled that information, it would be wise of us to go ahead and store that in this database and then maybe even save that out to a file. So that database, again, is just a dictionary. It's not a legitimate database. We would want to store that to a file or at least a second Python file because we don't want to do API calls every single time. It's fine in this one where they're free, but most of them have a limit as to how many API calls you can do in a minute or an hour or whatever. And that's to make sure you don't smash their servers. They also will charge you for all the API calls. So you might get the first 500 free. And then after that, they're charging you 5-10 cents a call, whatever it may be. Now on, yeah, exactly. Every time you're testing your code, it's killing you, right? So you really want to be mindful of whatever API you're doing. If it's totally free, it's not a big deal. But if you guys are calling a bunch of information, obviously this is very simple information. But if you're calling back massive amounts of data, you don't want all that data traffic going back and forth. All right, I'm going to pause this just for a second. So that's the gist of this particular API. Now, there may be more data that you want to pull out. If we go to the airport info, that's very simple data. If you looked into something like this ADBS, you're going to see a whole lot more endpoints over here on the left-hand side, right? So this would allow us to do a search for aircraft that's within 1 nautical mile. We can also do 10 miles, 250 miles, etc. that we want to go through there. So let's just see what aircraft would come back within 1 mile radius of whatever we give it. So on this side, you'll notice that because we went to Python before, it automatically copied that stuff up, over. So let's copy this. We'll just create a new file over here. and we'll say Python file, call it planes. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we got the same thing as before. Now, before we get carried away, we actually want to tweak some things over here, right? So one, we need to look at our parameters of things that we can pass in. And it wants to know the latitude and longitude that we would send it, right? So if I click in here, you can see that this API call, instead of having query strings in there, it actually wants you to pass lat slash the number, lon slash the number, distance one. So see how it builds out this URL depending on what we're trying to do? What we would want to do is start with this as our base URL, right? And then we would add in these pieces depending on if we wanted the user to change things. At the end, we need to generate this URL in order for this to work. Does that all kind of make sense as to what's going on there? So because these are the variables that would change in this case. Basically, these numbers, and this number would change over time. All right. So let's see where this latitude and longitude is. Let's just go out here to Google Maps. And if we do that one, comma, this one, where do we end up? In the UK. All right. Well, let's see what's within a mile of us here in Hayes. So let's go to Hayes, Kansas. And we need to get the latitude and longitude for this area, right? So if I just put a dot, and let's just put this dot really close to where we're actually at, which is not there. We're here, right? Am I backwards? Where am I at in the world? Where am I? Okay. There's Dwight. Okay, so we're here on campus. We want to get to Hammond Hall. There's Hammond Hall. All right, we're going to steal this here. So let's just copy text, which of course it's not letting me do. So we click on it and then we get this here. So we're going to steal this one. Let's paste that into this latitude. And for the longitude, like that. Okay. We have this section over here. We look at our headers, nothing we need to change. Authorizations, basically this is an open API. And because we said 1 on this call, remember this is the number that changes on here. We could change this to 5. It would just be this number back here that would end. Let's subscribe to test. And note, for us to do this API, it's $10 a month. All right. So probably won't be testing this particular API unless you guys want to subscribe for $10 a month. Note that there's no rate limit, meaning that we could send as many requests to this as we wanted at that time. And you would get a total, there's no rate per second that we would be limited to. We are limited to 10,000 queries in a month. If we wanted more, we'd have to buy more at 0.0015 per request. Okay. So you want to test this one? Probably not. I ain't shelling out $10 at this moment, but this is where you can pull that kind of information going through there. Now the ABS, this is a major exchange that you pull stuff from. There's other ones out there that are free. So with like this one, for example, this one would get you the cheapest tickets on API 1. API 2 would get you some special offers. 3, that's more like airline data and JSON format. Let's see what else we can find out here. Flight sim traffic. So this would simulate getting real live feed traffic data that you could probably pipe into something like Microsoft Flight Simulator, because you're getting real live traffic data that you could then inject as a module in there. All sorts of codes you can get in there. But you would typically want to find something that's free in order to play with and test, especially for the projects in this class. So there's flight data. What else did you guys have?
Specials or anything
specials and coupons for food. I love it, right? So food specials or coupons. So I've had people play with this too, where you have this recipe, food nutrition. Well, what that would be handy for, if you look at over here, you could do a price breakdown based on IDs that come in. Taste, what's cool about this one is, say you wanted to build your own MyFitnessPal app. You could do that with this. It has the database of all the stuff from everything that's out there. And then given they give you a bunch of items, you could then ask for a recipe that includes those items. So you could build your whole app centered around this kind of stuff. You could analyze it by cuisine, the ingredients, whatever you want to do. There's lots of cool ones out here that are fairly free. Let's go back to Rapid API. View all categories. Give me just the free ones. You mentioned weather. Weather's another good one that we can usually get for free for some places. So that one's a subscribe. Usually there is somewhere in there. There's one that will give you a filter. They've really changed this website. This is not what it looked like in the past. You used to be able to filter really easy for that one. But this is a decent one. So with this one, we need to subscribe, but we can do a free plan, but we only get 100 requests in a month. Right. Everything after that is 0.005. Or we can pay this one and get 100,000 requests. So let's start a free plan, and it wants my credit card information. Maybe not so much. I've done this in the past. Let's not do that one. There's going to be some in here that are free. Not that one though. Everybody wants their money. So you can find stuff in Rapid API, but that's not the end all be all, right? So like I said, you can always Google search and go find something. So I tell you what, we've already talked about our friend ChatGPT in this world. So let's just go ask ChatGPT what would be some good ones in order to find. So chat sure it'll redirect me, and we'll just use the free one that's showing there now. What is a good Python API for getting weather information for free? Not fee, free. So we have cool tools like this now that save you from having to sit there and Google and find everything else in the world, right? Open weather, that was the one I'd used in the past. So let's go check that out. Here's what's cool. That gives you some example code to go do this kind of stuff. So if we went out to open weather map, let's just go look at the website. And again, in this class, I welcome you using ChatGPT. There's no reason for you to spend hours trying to research this stuff. Get some examples out of there. Learn, play with it, see what you can get out of there. Let's see here. There we go. Open weather map. They have a open API call. This one here, 3.0. It allows you to get the current weather, minutes, forecasts. You could pay for different ones that you do. We want to get a open source one, which I know is there. It just gives you generic data. There we go. So you can see this one here. You can do professional collections. That'll get you a bunch of other data. Some's free, some's not. Depends on what you're wanting to pull. So for us, we are going to use Mr. GPT to tell us which one to pull. And it looks like they have this one here, and you need some API key. Well, that was not handy because that's definitely not free, right? But the free tier provides current weather information, has a limit on the number of API calls you can do per minute. We still need to get a key. So let's do a subscribe. And it's wanting us to pay or put in there. All right, on to another one. WeatherBit, free tier. Sincel, free tier. Is there any? Let's try that. All right, let's try the open weather map free plan. Now, as you'll notice, most of these guys somebody has to pay the bills, right? They're grabbing massive amounts of data, so they're trying to get you to at least do something going in there. So let's get this API key here. Let's just create an account for the sake of creating an account. I encourage you to actually read the EULAs. Don't just hit agree. That's good because I couldn't remember the password I just said. Oh, come on. Bridge. Set a bridge. Me neither. Pretty sure I'm never a human, no matter what I do. All right, let's do other FHSU. Sure. All right, they sent it to my email. All right, let's pause the video. Okay, so you can see once I got in here and I was accumulated, I have this said API key in here, right? You can give it a name, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to say this is Python or ADV Python. So I remember what it is. And it generates me a new key going out here, right? This is my default one. I'm going to go ahead and trash that one. And now I have this one. So this is my API key. Now, obviously, I don't want you guys hammering it because otherwise I would burn up through all my keys. It's fine. I'll trash it when we're done here. But we can now go to ChatGPT. We can steal that same one that we had before to get us situated. So let's copy that. That looks good. And instead of planes, we're going to do this one. Now, it wants us to paste our API key in here. Again, normally when you submit assignments, we're going to do environment variables. For now, I'm just going to paste it in there. It's no big deal. Again, I'm going to trash it when we're done here anyway, provided I remember. Okay, then we want to get a city that we want to pull weather for. So let's say Hays, Kansas. Was that all caps earlier? I don't remember. All right, URL, it wants the city and it's going to append this in there. So all we did was use a simple F statement to build out the call, just like we saw on the other one where we were going to have to plug in latitude and longitude. We'll get the same thing in there. Response, we're going to get that from our request.get URL. In this case, it's going to take our data, automatically convert it as JSON, and then we're just printing it. So you'll see everybody does it a little bit differently. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We go ahead and run it. The goal is that we should get a bunch of JSON data. So I got a bunch of airports. Anybody know why I got a bunch of airports? Up here at the top, it says main, and then that's what I'm hitting play on. So it's trying to run this file. We wanted to now run planes over on this side, right? So you'll click this drop down over here, and you'll create a current file, and then hit play, and that will run the one that's up here. So you guys will run into that when you're playing in PyCharm. If you're trying to run multiple files, if it doesn't execute correctly, you probably got the wrong one there. All right. Code 401, message, invalid API key. Please go to wherever and get your API key. All right. Well, let's go see if I got the right one. Yeah, it's on. Let's try that again. Looks like it should be right. Let's just leave London in here to see if we're missing anything there. Okay. That didn't work. Request looks good. Let's just go out here to the call. We can probably figure out how to do this. So services, weather view. Get API key. Historical for any location. Try now. They had to go and make this really complicated. These used to be really easy to play with. Now they made them really complicated. Oh, this lets you download history. Well, this is a really good tutorial. You'll notice this when you watch the other videos, you see this all the time. So fast forward through all the part where I'm thumbing around trying to figure it out because they change this every year. That's the reason I re-record videos every year. It's also the reason I give 2 weeks for APIs because you're going to fight trying to find the right API to get the data. That is half of this class. And again, part of your your project at the end is finding an API that actually gets you the data that you want. Because you're going to do this. There's going to a whole lot of trial and error. Thankfully, some of these will get you some of these won't necessarily get you the right ones. Let's see if Tomorrow IO has something. That's cool. That looks good. Get a free weather API. How free is free? Still wants an email address. Okay, well, we're close. Let's just use a Google account here. While I'm thinking about it, I'll go back and trash that API key like I said I was going to. Okay, cool. Here, not here. Nope, I'm losing windows here. There we go. I don't want to tell you more about my life. Sure. Personal projects. There we go. Okay, I'm on board. I got a mobile app. Don't need that. Here is my URL that I need to paste in. Notice that it has my API key in it. So I'm just going to scratch this guy. And let's see. You can see all the different things that it's going to try to pull back. That's kind of cool. It's got a nice little API feature here to get the information. Since we are able to use the weather API one or this tomorrow one, members, where's chat? Chat told me to use this. Let's try that. As you notice, chat lies. So again, don't rely on chat. We need that API key. Let's go back, grab it. Manage APIs. Here's my API key. Great. Copy that. Here. Paste. And run it. Yay, invalid parameters. Okay, we're getting closer. It just means that we didn't make a request, right? We have a city and we have an API, but that's all we really had. So let's see if there's something else we can pull out of this API. Let's go back to the home. It's not what I want. Back here. Why is this crashing so bad? Come on. Wow, that really got angry, didn't it? So yes, when you see me struggle with this, this is completely normal. All right, make our first API call. That sounds, legitimate. So we could do that. We can pull in here. This is probably not in the same format. So let's double check that. Let's just put this here. API tomorrow for, yes, definitely not the same. So let's just use this URL as this URL. Nope. That URL. That looks good. Here's our API key. We could take that out and we could put that up here, which I'm assuming is already there. Great. And in this one, we could use a parenthesis API key. Great. And then it wants a location based off longitude and latitude. Great. We'll just keep that there for now. See if that works. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we got tons and tons of data back on one little API call. And this is what's going to happen when you guys do this kind of stuff. It gets pretty gnarly because you're going to get tons of data back, but it's awesome. You just need to filter it. So I can do one call, get a ton of information, store it, then call from that from here on out. So let's say I don't want to make more API calls from this particular thing. I already got this location. Let's take all of this data. We're going to highlight it. It's a lot. It's a lot of data. There we go. All right. Remember, this is nothing more than a dictionary, right? So if I go to File, New, that's not what I wanted. Try this again here. Right click, New, Python file. We're going to call this My Data. And in this My Data, we're going to say data equals that. All right. And when I do data equals that, what that does is that creates that dictionary for me so that I don't have to make that API call over and over and over as I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. So now back in my planes, I can come back here and instead of making this call, which I no longer have to do, all I have to do is say from my data, import data, right? And if I run this again, I get the exact same thing without having to make another call back to the API. So when you guys are playing, do that so that you store it in a second file. All of it's here. It's nice and clean. Now we can go ahead and look at some other stuff here. So let's do our pretty print. Import pp print. Let's do a p print p. Let's see what that actually looks like. Aha. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. And like you said, lots of information. But what they do is they have an overall dictionary that has keys of location and timelines. Within timelines, we have a dictionary that has a keyword of daily. And inside that is a list of daily time values that we can get out. And then of those, we get tons of information about that particular forecast in that timeline. So we'll get things like the dew point, min, max, and average, the evaporation, ice accumulation, snow, weather, etc. Notice these are the timelines that we would get it from. So 08/28 tomorrow. So this is basically doing daily time values, right? We can see that later on. It may give us a monthly time value if we wanted it to for here. This one is now our hourly times. So it's much easier to drill into these and get some data that maybe makes it a little easier for us to play with. So let's do that. We know that this data is coming out. Let's say our hourly is going to be data timelines. Inside of timelines, we are looking for hourly, right? And that should give us back a dictionary from there. And then let's do a pretty print of our hourly. See if that helps get us just a subset of that data. And it looks like it did. So this works well, right? We're getting back a list of quote values, and each one of these, it's a list, which we can do much, much easier now. And we have this one of 08/27 at 1900. Next one is at 20, etc. Let's just get the next 5 hours. So how would we get the next 5 hours out of there? Does anybody remember how to do that from 360? Yep, that would be one way to do it. For loop with range. Another way to do it is doing a slice, right? Remember, we have it now as a dictionary. So all we have to do is slice, or I'm sorry, we have it as a list. We could just slice the first 5 out. So we could say top or next 5 equals hourly. And of hourly, we want to get 0 to, we want the next 5. What do we put? Remember how slice works? Does it include the last number or is it up to? Yeah, right. Those tricky ones like that. Let's try 5 and see what happens. All right. PP print. PP print. Oops. That's not what I wanted. and next 5. There we go. Looks like that got us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So what does that mean? Does it? It does not include, right? It goes up to, but does not include when you're doing slices. So that gets us the next 5 hours. And if we want to do just pull a little bit of that, say, for example, the wind speed for each one of those, we could then simply out of next 5, say 4 hour in hourly, or next 5 rather. Print for, and then we're just going to throw that time in there, right? So let's do hour time is no, that's not right. Yeah, hour time. Yep, that gets us back to time is hour values wind speed. See, it chased it up. It's not wind speed though, it's wind capital speed. Like that. See if that does what we're looking for. I might have broke it there. Nope, there you go. There's the wind speed for the next 5 hours inside of there. Okay. So lots of data down to a little bit of data that you care about. Practice this, like just randomly find something you want to do and then see how to drill down. This part will take you time to learn and see how you want to tear up that data because it's all in JSON format. Now, here's the cool part. If I go over here to my data and I copy all of this and I say, oh, Mr. Chat GPT, my friend, please help me out. Here is data back from an API. I would like to build a nice output of the date and time. Or let's see, I would like to build a nice hourly forecast for today and give me the best information to print to the console of a Python script. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go here. Dump in all that data, hit enter. Well, oh, bigger. And that's why you pay for ChatGPT. No, I'm just kidding. But you could trim out that data a little bit, dump it in here, and start asking it questions about it, right? And that is so much better. Yes, you should learn how to do this, but what it outputs will give you a script. Look at the script it gives you, then modify it, massage it, go back and forth, go back and forth. It is an assistant. We are in the world of AI. Use it and treat it like a librarian assistant. Okay? It's a tutor. So don't be afraid to do that. Obviously, this is a ton of lines going through here. So how many lines did we end up with? We actually can't tell because it's not lines of code. It's just data points. That's awesome, though. Sweet. Does anybody know how we could figure out the total number of information in there? I'm on Python 360. So if we wanted to print, there you go. So len of data, and what part of data do we need to pull? Timelines hourly, we could do it that way. You're cheated. Use the AI code to autocomplete. There you go. 120. So there's 120 that's been put in there. which means we got 12 hours of the next however many days. Pretty cool. So that's where I'll leave you today. There again, the big thing for Thursday for this group will be go find some APIs that you thought were pretty cool, like go play with a couple, and then let's come back here and see how much data we can dig out of them. There's going to be a couple that I'll walk through as we go in. So for example, when we start playing with an introduction APIs and these kind of stuff, I'll walk you through going like getting the finance data. And for example, that's going to be very relevant to your first homework assignment because you will use an API to go grab finance data. And you guys will go find stock tickers, and we're going to build some stuff with the stock tickers and stuff. So we can save the stock stuff for there, and we can just keep doing examples. These were just days of me recording us playing around like this. It's the reason this is my favorite class again, right? Whatever you're interested in, that's what we're doing that year. So the only way it isn't super boring on Thursday is y'all come back with some ideas and APIs you want to play with. Yeah. Just do some Google. Yeah, preferably free. I appreciate that. But yeah, do some Google searches. See if you can find out one that you're interested in. Hey, this looks like a cool one. I poked with it. Let's see what we can find. Yeah. Spotty Pie. I've had students do that in 360 as well as this class, and having it build playlists for them and all sorts of stuff. Yep. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.